Good morning, everyone. This is the session on high school distributed leadership. Is everyone in the right room? Yeah? Okay, because they had this one was supposed to be, I think it was on evaluation or assessment, and then they switched it. But we're glad to have everyone here. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to select and sit in on this session. We're hoping that this interactive session will provide you with the useful tools, resources, tips, strategies that you can go back and take back to your schools, states, and districts. So to begin, my name is Melissa Brown Sims. I'm with the National Comprehensive Center for Teacher Quality, or the TQ Center, which is housed under the American Institutes for Research, or AIR. And on our panel today, our presenters are Dr. Carolyn Kelley and Dr. Paul Bredeson from the University of Wisconsin, Madison. Both are from the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. Paul is a professor at UW, and he has more than 20 years of experience as a school administrator and a high school Spanish teacher. His current research centers around alternative conceptions of leadership, particularly when it comes to school leadership, or school principals, I apologize. His work also examines the role of the school leaders in design, delivery, and assessment of outcomes, professional development that builds upon organizational capacity to enhance student learning and equity in schools. Paul has received the Jack A. Culbertson Award for his outstanding contributions to the field of educational leadership. And Dr. Kelley is the former chair of the department, and her current research focuses on online formative assessments and feedback systems to support instructional leadership through a tool called the Comprehensive Assessment for Leadership for Learning, or the CALL. It's currently being implemented nationwide right now in 2 states, Mississippi and in Wisconsin, and in the next year or 2 we hope to go in further states or in additional states. Last year, Dr. Kelley published a toolkit for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, which documents the work of 18 high schools within Wisconsin to build leadership for learning teams. And it's that toolkit that we will kind of be referring to and using throughout today's session. And I will turn, I apologize. So we will have some interactive activities highlighting some tools within the toolkit, and the resources that we are providing can be found on the SIG conference website, and we can pull up at towards the end of the conference the toolkit, so you know what you're looking at when you go on the website. So I will turn around and hand this over to Paul and Carolyn.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I just wanted to announce that I am not one of the legislators or senators that escaped to Northern Illinois. I know that you're suspicious that anytime there's a problem in Wisconsin, we flee to Chicagoland, but it's simply not true. Carolyn and I are really delighted to be here and share with you work that we've done over the last 3 years with urban high schools. And our take on this, as you can tell, is distributed instructional leadership, based on the title. And what we'd like to do is we have some goals ourselves, and then we would like to tap into some of your interests or issues. And so let me first begin by describing what we hope to accomplish in our session together this morning. To begin, we want to be able to describe to you in pretty vivid detail our work in six urban high schools. And we want to talk about their progress, we want to talk about the challenges, and then we want to talk about the opportunities that they found. We don't have any ironclad, silver bullet, perfect framework. What we want to do is use our findings to lay out a framework that we believe is quite useful. So we're going to then use some of our research findings to help build and suggest a framework that can be usable in the restructuring of instructional leadership in urban high schools. And lastly, we're going to focus on two critical areas. The one is, what is it that people need to learn in order to make this transition? So we're going to be talking about what's the professional development that's required to move successfully through these transitions. Secondly, what is the transformational role, and what is the transition that traditional department chairs, because we'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but that traditional department chairs will take in what we call distributed instructional leadership, DIL for short. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're simply going to ask you, what are some items that you would like? We don't promise to answer everything, because we obviously have a presentation, but we can address a number of issues. So as you thought about coming to this session, one thing that would be helpful to us is, what did you hope might occur in a session like this? And then we're just going to jot those down and keep track, and then as we go through, we'll try to attend to that as much as we can. So please, this is meant to be interactive. We're going to share ideas, and we can share questions and challenges also. Yes, please.
Heading into a principalship where there's not a lot of support staff. And I'm wondering, the reason I'm here is because I'm looking for ideas on how to engage not only my instructional staff, but my staff members, my new staff members, in this particular topic. Knowing that I don't have a ton of 31A Title I or Sigma where I'm going. So it's a little different than maybe some other people in the room, but I'm trying to take some of that away from the session.
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize for interrupting real quick, but we're recording this, and so I'm going to need, and we only have this mic that is tethered to the back of the room. So when you guys have questions, I apologize, but we're going to need you to come and actually speak into the microphone.
Okay. Do you want that one repeated?
It's okay. I think we can.
Okay. Please.
Go ahead.
Paul Schwaller from Wisconsin, great state also, home of the champion Packers. I have the question of if I'm trying to develop a leadership team within my building, and what could you see within a year would it take a year to build the capacity of that team, to get them trained into that distributive leadership model, or does it take longer, or how long would it take me to build this team up? And
you've been reading your stuff here?
Pardon?
You've been sneaking ahead on the slides? Okay.
No.
Okay, yeah, we will address that directly. Thank you.
We are changing to not just principal-centered curriculum instruction to a content area instructional to help the kids, looking for the professional development that it would require and what tools I need to give the teachers to be able to do that.
Great.
How to make sure in distributed leadership that there aren't overlaps in job responsibilities, and that everyone's able to be the leader that everyone needs that person to be, and not so much stepping on each other's toes and crisscrossing areas and getting wires crossed.
Great, those are great. You think?
Okay.
Yeah. Should we stop there? Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. That's go
One
ahead.
more.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Pam Sagety from the wonderful state of Ohio. Working with several buildings, I'm noting that the buildings are starting to build up their building leadership teams, and what I'm noting is that the principals are having a difficult time letting go to delegate.
Yeah, I can see that. Great. Okay. These are all really good questions, and I just want you all to know you came to the right place, because this is hopefully by the end we can sort of give you what we know about this from our experience, and maybe have a little more opportunity to answer questions more directly at the end. So this session is based on a project. I'm just going to skip ahead to this. The session is based on a project that Paul and I worked on with 2 other universities and the 5 largest school districts in Wisconsin and the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin over about a 5-year period. And especially in the last 3 years, the project was funded, both of these projects were funded by the Wallace Foundation, but in the last 3 years we were working specifically with high schools, and Paul and I worked directly with 6 urban high schools, but there were 18 altogether in the project. And the design of the project was to build leadership capacity in high schools. There was a concern that among the participants that the pipeline for leadership development at the high school level was insufficient, and that one of the best ways to build leadership capacity was to not just build the leadership capacity of the principal, but to have the principal build the leadership capacity of their leadership teams, and to that way sort of grow a body of leaders that would help not just the work in that particular school, but also the pipeline for future principals. And so the project was designed to work in the high schools. Paul and I worked and spent a lot of time, weekly sometimes, in the high schools, working with the principal to help them rethink how they use their leadership team and apply that leadership team to advance a learning initiative in the school. The project was very sort of give and take and developmental, so we didn't go in there saying, we're going to change you. We went in there saying, let's work together and figure out how to do this. And so we ended up, not the grant itself wasn't targeted necessarily toward department chairs, but the schools that we were working with pretty quickly focused on that leadership team, the department chair leadership team, as the focal team that they wanted to work with. So we worked for 2 years in these schools to help the principal develop the leadership capacity of the department chair leadership team and carry out a learning initiative that way. Go ahead. So I'm not going to. I guess the high school leadership challenge, as you all know, is that these a lot of times a lot of the work on leadership in schools focuses on other levels of leadership, elementary school leadership especially. But what we found is that the leadership challenge in high schools is much more complex. These institutions are the work of a high school principal is more like a mayor than an organizational leader often. But a lot of times reform initiatives come in and they try to sort of recreate structures to help support the institution. And our goal was really to sort of recognize that high schools have structures in place that can be utilized better to advance learning. And so our goal was really to build on the structures that already existed rather than trying to create new structures. And we sort of think about this as kind of the awakening giant. And in fact, what we found in a lot of these schools was, despite early reluctance from some of the principals, as they got into this, they found that their department chairs not only were willing to take on this, but they were excited about it. They were, sort of finally being asked to do what they could do, to lead their schools around instructional leadership. So before I get into this, and I don't know, this microphone thing might be a problem, but I guess I wanted to just take a minute to ask you guys to do a little brainstorming, and maybe if we shout really loud, we won't need them, or I could repeat what you say. How about let's do that? And you could just tell me, what do your department chairs currently do in your schools? What are the roles of the department chair in your schools currently? You can just shout. Just go ahead. Yeah, That's great. Yep, and I think that's the research shows, and what we found in the schools we worked with too, it was that's a really common thing, that a lot of times they're used, department chairs are used as communication agents. They are told what's going on, and then they're supposed to relay that on to other people. And so making that transition is really what this project was about. Are there other roles that you? Yeah, go ahead.
In our district, there are administrative positions, so they evaluate teachers. Could also coordinate curriculum renewal.
Okay.
Be ready for Common Core, but also use understanding by design. That's a big focus of theirs right now.
Okay.
Being in classrooms, not just as part of evaluations. There's some of what she described in terms of that role, communicating and that kind of thing, but they also participate in recruitment and hiring.
Okay. Okay, so I think you're raising an important issue, which is that department chair, the role of the department chair, how they're selected, and what their contractual obligations and responsibilities are, looks very different across schools. We worked with some schools that had where the principal had complete discretion over who those chairs were, and we worked with schools who had contractual chairs who were chairs until they decided to retire or leave or stop, but in your case, it sounds like they're doing a lot of instructional leadership tasks already, and they have an administrative position, which is a little atypical, I think, for that role, but that's great. Anyone else want to? Yeah, go ahead.
On top of instructional leadership and everything else, they do some of the mundane, ordering the supplies, taking care of all of that, so it takes it off of the administrative plates.
Right, that's right. So they do a lot of kind of management tasks. In addition to ordering supplies, a lot of times they're the room assignment people. So they, and depending on what department you're in, those roles can look quite different too. If you're in a music or art kind of arts kind of role, having to schedule all those facilities can be really a big part of the job. So, okay, so I think your experiences echo what we saw and what we read about in our research around this, which is that department chairs often have a traditional role that includes communications, budgeting, scheduling, but typically not so often around instructional leadership. The ironic thing is that the people who have looked at this find that in schools that are really moving forward, the department chairs play a critical role in this. And the chairs are in a really unique position to be leaders in the school because they have this sort of unique foot in the classroom. So they have both the respect of their peers and understanding of what context the teachers around them are working in, because they were doing it too. But they also have the opportunity to have a school-wide policy view, so they can sort of step outside their classroom and see what the broader school needs are and what kinds of policy initiatives are coming from the district or from the school level that need to be addressed and moved down into the classrooms. They have leadership content knowledge. A lot of the work around improving around school improvement suggests that you need to not only have sort of leadership skills, but having the credibility and the ability to understand the unique challenges of your content area also is a really important leadership skill. And some of the work that Paul and I have done before, looking at what we expect of the principal, suggests that it's really, if you expected a principal to be an expert in every content area in their school, it's not a reasonable expectation. And so tapping into this expertise for leadership is really important. And the other thing that the department chairs have is that often they're already recognized leaders in the school. So some of the schools in this broader project that we worked with had worked with school improvement teams that just drew from teachers who were kind of interested in leadership, and they didn't always have sort of the credibility that the department chairs had because the department chairs are already recognized leaders in the school. So essentially, what the kind of model that we're describing is our effort to kind of capture what happened over these 2 years in the schools that we worked with. And what we found was that while there were unique challenges in each school, that the general process that was followed in the schools seemed to be fairly similar, and a lot of the challenges were, while the schools themselves have unique contexts, a lot of the challenges kind of occurred in multiple contexts. So what this model kind of describes what we are, like I said, our attempt to capture how to build distributed instructional leadership in a leadership team. Because the project didn't require a focus on department chairs, the first step was really selecting a focal leadership team. And like I said, in this case, it was the department chairs. There might be reasons that you don't choose department chairs as a focal team because of how they're selected or your particular context or whatever. But what we found was that this process of building the leadership capacity of the leadership team was a really huge and important way of strengthening the leadership capacity of the principal, because the principal had to sort of explain what instructional leadership was. They had to model it, they had to teach it, and they had to hold people accountable for it. And so that made them think a lot more in many cases about what instructional leadership was in order to teach and model it to others. So the other idea of having this focal leadership team is that it gives you as a principal an opportunity to focus your energy and attention on your modeling behavior around that one leadership team instead of saying, tomorrow I'm going to be an instructional leader. You could sort of, these principals were able to focus and say, when I get to that meeting on Wednesday afternoon, I need to have my act together around what instructional leadership is and to use this team as a leadership team and not just as a communicating agent. So I think the other, maybe not. I'll just walk through these other steps really quickly. So after the team was identified, the next step was building a shared vision. So that is building a coherent and agreed upon agenda and focus for the team, looking at values, looking at data for the team, looking at the school's context and history and challenges, so that the team itself had a goal and a focus to work together. Then a big part of that was defining the role of the department chair. So and being very explicit about what that role was, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Once the role was defined, the chairs often were very trepidatious about it because they weren't sure they wanted to take on that kind of leadership role. And so a big part of this was providing professional development to address the concerns that those chairs had about their leadership. Many of them, while they had led meetings with their peers for a long time, didn't feel like their role was as a leader, as an instructional leader. They were sort of the peer coordinator, of the teams. And so teaching them how to take on that role was a big part of it. And then mobilizing leadership required the principals to behave differently. So it's not just the chairs that need to change what they're doing, but if you want a chair to be something other than a communication agent, then you don't go into a meeting and say, here are the 7 things that the school's working on that you need to tell your department about. You need to actually use those people as leaders. And then finally, looking more broadly to the structures and roles of the broader school as these department chair leadership teams grew in their leadership capacity. Often the administrative leadership team would say, what about us? We don't have training in how to run an effective meeting, if they're doing it, we need to know how to do it too. And so it gave the principal an opportunity to then grow their experience in working with that one leadership team to their broader leadership in the school and to build the capacity of these other teams as well. And then also working with the districts was an issue, which I think we'll get into a little more. So, making sure that everybody's on board with what you're trying to do and try to move the whole system to support the changes that you're making in the leadership team. Yeah, I think so. Like I said, we work with 6 schools, and I think I've described this pretty well. So maybe we can move on. Sorry.
What I'd like you to do now, for just the next minute or so, at your table, by yourselves, I want you to jot down either in bullet form or a wonderfully elegant, succinct sentence what you believe instructional leadership is, because there seems to be some general conversation and not necessarily a major consensus around that. But in your mind now, as you hear that term, instructional leadership, we put distributed on it, right? What are we trying to distribute? So take about 2 minutes, write it down, and then would you compare at your table talk, would you see how much consensus there is among you regarding what you've just put down? Okay? I'm sorry. From this? No. No, I think we'll just kind of do a hand raising or something. I don't know. That's because otherwise, we're already. Okay, so we're going to do these next 3 slides. And then we'll do, and they have that in their packets, right? Just about what they said. 45. About 45 folks. Good. Yeah, I think that's nice. Yeah. think let's give them another minute. Okay, we're going to give you another minute to continue sharing, and then we'll pick a few of those big ideas up. And you two better get consensus. There's only two of you. Otherwise, we're separating you. Okay, now we could spend a fair amount of time as a group talking about this individually, and what we'd like to do now is try to capture some of your big ideas that came up at your table talk. So let's start at this first table over here. What were some big ideas that came up around instructional leadership? And if you would speak as loudly as possible, and I can repeat them also for the program. Focus on all student achievement, okay? Another? Coaching and mentoring. Any other ideas there? I mean, I'm sure there were lots of ideas, but... Data-driven decision-making. Okay, great. Let's go to the table in the center. In addition to what we've already talked about or mentioned. Please, anybody? Okay. Coach, mentor. It was a lot of things, etc. It was great. Absolutely, absolutely, right. And very multifaceted. Other ideas, please.
Implementing best practices, making sure they monitor.
Implementing and monitoring, okay, best practices. I know there's consensus down at this table in front here.
Well, many of the things that I've said, but we also talked about a person who had the ability to build collaboration.
Okay, building collaboration, all right. Any other things from the other table? Yes, please.
Setting a vision.
Setting a vision. Okay.
Something you have to empower your faculty.
Okay. Setting a vision, empowering, collaborating, coaching, mentoring, supporting, monitoring. We get all that. Boy, we've almost created an impossible set of job tasks, right? But let's take that on, because that's really our task here. So the first slide that I want to talk about is the work that we do is kind of messy. It would be really much easier for Carolyn and me if we didn't have to get in and wrestle with the kind of nettlesome problems that are the daily life of principals and teachers and department chairs and districts. And so, if we could stand back and observe and not be participants. We were participants, remember? We went in on a regular basis. We consulted with them in the sense that they said, well, what do you think of this idea? And I said, well, that might work. Or they'd give us ideas on what we might be doing. So we participated in, as you are now, we would sit at the table, we would be with teachers, we would be with principals, we would critique, we would help develop tools and instruments. But that creates a challenge for researchers, right? Because we're deeply embedded in this work. We want it to be successful. So on the other hand, we've got to remember we want to keep an objective eye. What are our research questions? What are we trying to find out? And of course, it's a little messy, because when you're doing an intervention and you're doing inquiry about it, you have to make sure that you understand the boundaries. It's not that they're not crossed over. It's simply that you understand that. So when you come to look at your findings in your data, you're able to then interpret them in such a way as that this is not the magical answer, because we said it was going to be the intervention at work, but here's what we found out, warts and all. Researcher interest, did we want our schools to succeed? Oh, yes, we did. We had a lot of time and energy. And you know, they just kind of welcomed us in as part of the faculty. And so we really had a vested interest in positive outcomes. And so we had to be mindful of that. And of course, anytime you bring others in, including researchers like us, that has an impact, right? So we were hoping it was a positive impact toward instructional leadership in distributing it. But we also know that in terms of inquiry, that kind of effect can really change findings. Dirty hands and guilty knowledge, it's amazing. Not to you, and not to me, really, what's going on in schools and all the information that you're privy to. And, of course, as scholars, we have to be very careful in terms of the sites themselves, but also the people. Because once you start talking about and critiquing what's going on in the school, it becomes very obvious who might have said that. And so oftentimes you come to understand a lot of interesting things. And, of course, that reaches into the ethical concerns piece. So what were we trying to do? We asked 3 basic questions. And, you know, what are the roles of principals and department chairs and instructional leaders? What do they look like in a comprehensive urban high school? As Carolyn said, you know, in the state of Wisconsin, I know, don't laugh, you know, you have urban centers in the state of Wisconsin. Yes, we do. We chose the 5 largest. But the deal is that in the large urban high schools, the ones we were working in were like 1,800 to 2,000 students. That'll give you a sense of what we call a large urban high school. I know there are larger urban high schools than that. But the half of the municipalities in the state of Wisconsin are smaller than that. Half of them. That means that the job of a high school principal is much more complicated, has many more people to manage, has a bigger budget than all of these little municipalities, and of course we're really worried about them. One of the other issues that I brought up earlier is that we wanted to talk about what's the content of professional development. That came up. So what is it that people actually need to learn? What new knowledge and skills do they need for building distributed instructional leadership in their high school? What is it they need to know? What does that look like? So defining that. And then lastly, the barriers and enabling conditions that exist for strengthening instructional leadership. Well, you'll love this. At our first session, and, you know, high school people are great. They come right at you. We said, well, we're here because this is an instructional leadership framework, and we want you to get at the task of instructional leadership. And the reason I wanted you to begin talking about instructional leadership and what you thought it was, they said, what do you mean by instructional leadership? Now, we had set ourselves up for that tough question, but we hadn't really taken it seriously enough in terms of tell me specifically what you mean when you want me to change from a traditional role that I've been taking care of things, mundane things, monitoring things, in some cases administrative tasks, and doing that. What is it that you want me to do as an instructional leader? And define it for us. And the literature, of course, we drew on that literature, and there's a lot of it. But to put it down in a succinct framework, and let me tell you our bias at the outset here. We did not want to come in with a prepackaged idea of this is what you must do. We really wanted it to be much more organic to the school, and we wanted it to really emerge from their created knowledge around what they believed were the important tasks of instructional leadership. But they were frustrated. They wouldn't accept that. So they said, in the next meeting when you come back, okay, so we sat down, and so here's what we pulled out from a variety of instruments and literature, is that instructional leaders create coherent, purposeful, and sustainable learning environments for all students and staff, okay? And then they still looked at us and said, so how do we do that? We said, all right. Here are 5 critical tasks that'll move us in that direction. Are they all the things instructional leaders do? No. But this is what we're going to be working on to move forward. We're going to facilitate this shared vision. You saw the earlier graphic, which was building that shared vision. So they did that at school level at department level. They use data, that came up, data-driven decision-making, for setting goals and assessing progress along the way. Effectiveness, both instructional effectiveness and organizational effectiveness. They supported student and staff learning. And I think it's really interesting sometimes, in my work in professional development over the last 20 years, one of the things that, schools are always talking about learning, but oftentimes they become hostile environments for the professional learning. We know lots of things about cognition. We know lots of things about how students learn. We know lots of things about motivation. But oftentimes we leave those things off the table when it comes to the very important learning needs of staff. So we were very attentive, not only in terms of this is what instructional leaders have to do, but this is how we're thinking about the professional development needed. And then continuously monitoring progress. Where are we? How do we know that? What do the data show? How can we explain this to others? Because others are beginning to ask, like other teachers in the school, parents, students, the school board, district folks. And then lastly, promotion of continuous improvement. So we gave them a definition. We said, all right, let's just focus on these 5 tasks. Let's see how far we can get. Now, before we move into presenting research findings in 2 areas, we're going to ask you to do a task. So if you'd open up your packet, please. There's a department chair want ad. I'll just go back here. And it looks like this. It just says department chair want ad. It says the department at West High School. We don't know. This is Midwest, I know, but.
It's on the back of the 3rd page.
Everybody find it? Okay. Now here's what we'd like you to do, and we've done this in our schools, because one of the things that we're going to talk about in our findings is role transition. So this is kind of a fancied up close exercise in which you got to fill in the blanks. All right? So I think this isn't going to take you more than 5 minutes to fill it in, and then we're going to identify some of the key abilities, skills, duties, knowledge in that, and then we'll shift into, okay, what did we find out about the professional knowledge that needed to be garnered? Everybody on same page here? So fill this out individually first, and then we're going to let you table talk a little bit, and then we'll come back together. By the way, don't worry about writing on this. Sometimes people want to keep a clean copy. All of this is in the toolkit. You can get it online. It's not copyrighted. Well, it is copyrighted, but it's not. Right? Yeah, you can use it. Okay, then let's see. Then I have, I think, 4 more slides. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I've got 6 slides. PD one is going to be covered. The timeline, I think we can talk Okay, we're gonna begin again, and I know it's a short timeline to do those kinds of things, but one of the reasons we wanted to do this want ad, and the way in which we've used it, is to find out how people construct this role of department chairs in their own minds. What is it that they're thinking about? Because if we're trying to help them transform that role or transition from one set of responsibilities to another, how is it we're thinking about it? So here's how we're going to do this, all right? I'm going to start right, no, I started with you before. Let's start way in the back corner, okay? You watching me back there? Now, all right, give me an adjective for wanted, for a department chair. An adjective. Anyone? Shout it out. Energetic. Okay, love it. Over to that table, another adjective in the far back. Compassionate. All right, and coming to the next table, one more adjective. Patient. Okay, so we need someone who's energetic, patient, and compassionate. Now, you might want to think about the people you've worked with. Okay? Now, all right, so listen, I'm right with you. Now, the next one, we're not actually going to fill in that blank so much, but you might think differently about it. It's a bit like Gertrude Stein saying, department chair is a department chair is a department chair, right? Actually, maybe not, because heading up pupil services, for example, as a unit, or special education services may be different, or counseling services may be very different from heading up a history department or a math department or an English department. And yet, one of the things that challenges us, we get captured by roles and titles, right? So everybody does the same thing. I don't know. So we might think about those adjectives differently. But now we want to know what kind of ability, the ability to do what? Okay, we're back at this first table to my right. Support college to improve instructional practices. How about this table? To anybody? Yeah. Motivate, instill, and distribute leadership. Okay, and one more. This table in the front. Persuade people to persuade people. Okay, now that we've got these people who are energetic, compassionate, and patient, and they can do these other things, they can persuade and all that, what we need is we're going to assign them some duties. Now, you don't have to conform to what I just said, but so your duties are going to include such things as, let's go to the next table. Inspire educational gains. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Let's go back to the back corner again. Don't be shy. Lead with use of student data, okay? And one more, please, to the back table. Leading collaborative teamwork. Okay. Now, this is going to require some skills and experience and a helpful knowledge of. So what kind of skills and experience would you like this person to have? Let's go to this center table right here in the middle. Okay, they need great interpersonal skills, good interpersonal skills. How about this table? What would you say skills they need? Okay, so they have experience in proven student achievement results for all groups. Okay, thank you. And what do you want them to be knowledgeable about? They need knowledge of what? Common core standards. What else would you want them to be? The next table, please. Challenges of high school reform and urban school populations, all right? And they need to be able to work in a work environment characterized by, back table, please. What's that work environment like? Chaos. What else? Okay, what else? Just shout it out. High expectations for continual improvement. Any other? Okay. Okay, an excuse-ridden environment. Okay, now we get the picture, right? Now you can see that people are going to be lining up all the way out to McCormick and Schmitz for a job like this, right? So, we got to say, come on, folks, there are rewards in this. There are rewards. So what would we identify then as, becoming a department chair? Actually, they lied to Carolyn and me. We've both been department chairs at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We are ex-chairs. And they, the person who's already in the chair has to fabricate a narrative that at once sounds challenging, and it will draw upon your expertise and skill and knowledge. And on the other hand, lie about the incentives and the rewards that you get, enough so that someone will volunteer to do it. Yeah. Is that?
Or when I was chair, I went to Paul and said, please, will you be chair after me, please? I don't want to do it anymore.
I was much cagier than that. I worked on a narrative with a colleague of mine for a year and a half, and it worked. And she keeps coming to me and said, why didn't you tell me about that? I said, it's story's unfolding. But, so what kinds of rewards do we have for these folks? Anybody? Stipends, okay. A lot of times they're negotiated stipends that come along, and some people actually admitted, why do you do this? I do it for the money. Okay? Some people said that. What other reward? Watching students and teachers succeed. Okay? Yeah. Another reward? Professional development leadership. Absolutely. Okay. And you know what? Besides all these fringe benefits you're going to get now, all those rewards, there are going to be a couple challenges in front of you, and we might identify what? Your biggest challenge right now is going to be what? Just take today. So the biggest challenge going forward is going to be? Change. Okay. Yes? Resistive team members. Okay. Well, you get the idea. This is important work for constructing knowledge around how we think about what is it that chairs need to do, and you begin selecting for these characteristics. Now, so let's take a look at some of the findings that we had. As we began this, in the 6 schools that we were involved in, we saw 4 intersecting domains that were really important. First being professional development, the second being obviously the whole area of instructional leadership and how we've defined it or what those critical tasks are. School improvement, to be sure, that's the idea here, right? And then role transition, that we knew that when we began working with these leadership teams, that there was going to be significant role transition for principals and for chair people. And that's not necessarily easy. Sometimes change is easy. Change can be an event. It's the that gets you. Is that how do I have to behave differently? What's my new role? What are the new relationships? I have new responsibilities, and there are new rewards. All of those kinds of things change, so the role transition, and Carolyn will be talking about her findings. Okay, so let's talk first about the professional development piece. One of the things that we discovered over this 2-year period of working with these teams, and it started with the building of the shared vision, was what kind of professional knowledge did they need, and how do they receive that knowledge? How do they set themselves up to learn in supportive environments? And the first piece that came out was ethical knowledge, because a lot of the questions that came around, these teams were usually 15 to 20 in the high schools, were ethical knowledge, and they needed to know why they were making this effort. Now, one of the things that really helped here, of course, is that building a sense of awareness and moral commitment was crucial. So as they looked at their high school, and for example, in one of our high schools that we worked with, they began with slides from 1965, when the high school opened. And fast forward to 2008-2009 school year, and guess what? The school, yeah, it kind of looked the same, although they'd added on and more students and all that. But the demographics of the school had dramatically changed. And they were serving almost not a completely different clientele, but a very different client. And in fact, what was interesting about this is many of the teachers in the school were actually kind of surprised by it when they began to look at the overall picture and the overall changes. They'd known something. There was some angst and uneasiness and uncertainty about it, and certainly they see, maybe there were more students of color, and it seemed like there were more students with challenging behaviors, and of course we didn't used to have police officers in the school, and there were all those things. But cumulatively, it was they had to know, so why are we going to spend this energy? Also, they're used to people like Carolyn and me coming into schools. Because we get to come in, and then, the project is over. We get to leave, but they have to stay. And I got to tell you, I was a former high school Spanish teacher and high school principal. I was exhausted after spending time with these folks. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to my office tomorrow, and it's going to be relatively quiet. I'm not having any parents call. I'm not having, any riots. I'm not having any of these other things. And so just capturing that. But the more important piece here in the ethical knowledge is, why are we doing this? And it's centered around students and success for all students. They also had to know some certain kinds of things. So they wanted to know the research. So at Basic Frameworks, you talked about change as being an issue and a resistance to it. What do we know about that? Well, there's quite a body of literature on change and effective strategies for change and how you deal with people who just don't do what you want them to do. Okay? They also needed a lot of process knowledge. Now, one of the things that the department chairs talked about, which is really interesting, is their legitimacy as leaders. In fact, the very word leader bothered some people. They didn't want to be called leaders because that equated with people called administrators. And one of the things that happens, and we know this from sociological studies, is that when you start kind of defining people like that, you remove them from their group. And that group is their source of support and protection. So if you take a teacher and you say, now you're one of the school leaders, in our world they often say, oh, you've joined the dark side. Those people who are administrators, right? And that's a way that we socialize people, right? We begin to push them out of the group. You're not in our group anymore. You're a part of that group. You're them. You're the other, okay? Now, so that was the, and people try to do it playfully, but they mean it. They actually mean it. And so their legitimacy as leaders, even when they didn't want to be called leaders, they said, well, I'm not very good at handling disruptive behavior. I'm not very good at setting an agenda. I'm not very good. And, here are people with 20, 25 years of experience. And they're adults, and you say, and so we stepped back and we said, okay, well, what does we need? And this was part of their learning. They needed a variety of process skills. How do you do this? How do you set an agenda? And I sat in on a couple of department meetings over these years, and in one, all I could do to keep my hands on my chair in the bottom and bite my lips because the faculty members were so disruptive. And I thought, well, I know what I would do, but I'm just going to wait and see. It was the most miserable. And finally, one of the English teachers said, God damn it, I'm not taking it anymore, and marched out of the meeting and never came back. We were only half an hour into the meeting. We had an hour and a half meeting after a dinner, and I thought we were going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. I thought, well, okay. Instructional leadership. Are you kidding? And then lastly, pragmatic knowledge. And this is really critical, is about all of us have deeply contextualized settings. So one of the reasons that we're very cautious about saying you do this, and this is how you do it, is we don't actually know the temporal history. We don't know exactly where you are at this moment. Some of these schools were at a great launching point. Others had to kind of slow down just a little bit. let's get this base first, and then we're going to launch. And so finding that, what we call pragmatic knowledge, knowing when can we do this? What's the history? Oh, we've seen this before. The resistors, right? We've seen people like you before. And then, just the readiness to learn, and then the timing of it. So there are a variety of things. I'm not going to go through all of these because they're already in your packet. And so, we discussed such things as the role of a public high school in a democratic society. The urgency of challenges. All you have to do if you want to begin to get people, as you well know, into moral commitment to transform high schools and instructional leadership is beginning to show the data. Show them the data. And they're often astounded at what happens in urban high schools, and especially for students who have been traditionally marginalized, and what those glaring gaps are. They do need to know things about instructional leadership. Now, we identified those 5 tasks we talked about. And then they wanted to know about change. So how are we going to go about this? What do we know about professional learning communities? What do we know about team planning? What do we know about high-performing schools? Is this happening anywhere? Can we go see it? What does it look like? All of those kinds of things. We had a theory of action. Carolyn laid that out earlier. This is how we think this is going to work. And then we have research, and they needed a lot of self-knowledge. In the process knowledge, we've already talked about some of those things, using data. You mentioned data-driven decision-making. Well, it was very interesting as you began to study data, not that we would construct the meaning from those data, but lay those data out in ways that it was accessible to them. And so what do you think about these data? And to set agendas, facilitate meetings, generating the vision, the shared vision was always a fun one. I remember at one of our high schools, after they developed, actually, and Carolyn did beautiful work helping them develop shared vision, what was the argument about between the principal and the department chairs? The department chairs said, "You're the leader. Tell the staff this is our shared vision." And the principal said, "I'm not doing it. You're the instructional leaders in the school. You're going to do it." And I think the compromise they ended up with is they used a combination of all of the players, little bit of the principal to introduce it, little bit from the department chairs, and then the students themselves to help present this vision. And so it was a thing about this is uncharted territory for a lot of people. They were uncomfortable standing up in front of their colleagues and asserting a leadership role, even though people knew they were department chairs and all that, but they were a little bit uncomfortable. It's that kind of radical egalitarianism as a norm in public schools, and if you try to stand out too much, you get kind of knocked back down, and so it's a very a tenuous position, to say the best. And then lastly, we've already talked about this, but the one thing I want to highlight here is the one bullet on creating a sense of urgency and zones of comfort. For me, it's always been, my children now are in their late 30s, but my grandchildren are 10 years old in 4th grade. I'm not waiting. If things are going to go on in their lives, I'm not waiting for a reform to take 3 to 5 years, right? We're looking for some change here, folks. And that's what's developing a sense of urgency about what's happening to high school students right now. One of our high schools, it's the most frustrating time for me in this project. We went in, and the person could detail every problem from the home to the community, through kindergarten and primary grades, through upper elementary to the middle school, why he had so many problems in the high school. I said, frankly, I don't care about that. What I care about is, what are you going to do when 500 freshmen walk through the door on August 31st? What are you going to do? But it was almost like, I think someone over here said, an excuse environment. All of these things. Not what's my responsibility, what's my moral commitment to this, but what am I going to do on the first day of school, notwithstanding all that other stuff that happened. I get that. And are there system things that need to change? Are there community issues? And yes. But we still have an obligation here. So creating that sense of urgency and certainly data had a lot to do with that. Okay.
So we're almost done, and but I wanted to just walk through quickly sort of how this process unfolded in the schools. And like Paul said, it worked differently in each school, different based on context and capacity and a lot of different things. But it'll give you an idea of how this sort of plays out. So, and this is just a picture of how, kind of how it unfolded. But we began by working with the principal, and the principal really had to understand what their own vision was for the school, and to sort of work to lead the development of a vision in the staff, and to understand the strategy that they were going to pursue. So thinking through not just sort of what's going to happen at the next meeting, but what is my goal for this year, and how am I going to build that strategy for leadership development. So the principal had to, and I guess when we first met with the principals at the beginning of this project and told them that they were going to be instructional leaders and build the instructional leadership of their leadership team, many of them felt hugely uncomfortable with that. I mean, these high school principals play a lot of different roles, and often they're more they see themselves as managers and sort of making the whole thing work, and not as instructional leaders themselves. And so getting them to even begin to think of themselves as instructional leaders, even if it's sort of what symbolic things they're doing that are going to provide support and presence for the leadership team, was a new way of thinking for some of them that some weren't very comfortable with at first. So the principal then is working with this leadership team again, and the kind of goals of that work were to build a community of practice among the leadership team. So creating opportunities for the leadership team to, a lot of these people had been in meetings with each other every other week for years, but they didn't see themselves as a community of support. And so providing some opportunities for problem solving and for building themselves as a community that could address the problems that they were facing together, and someone that they would go to when they had a problem was a new thing for many of them. And then creating this focus on improving student learning. Even the leadership team, we talked about defining the role of the department chair, but it's also important to define the role of the leadership team. These teams meet pretty regularly, but they don't have a goal other than, we're the department chairs, and so we meet every other week or whatever. So creating a set of goals for that team and a way of measuring progress for the team was really important as well. I think you can see in the leadership team part of the triangle. Some of the things that were really important were, as we said, defining the role, creating a vision for the team, creating a team, so doing team building activities, identifying skills and building skills for the team, modeling, and practicing their work. So one of the things that happened in these teams was that we worked with the principal to model effective, for example, how do you run an effective meeting? How do you set a goal for the team? How do you look at data? And so as the principal was leading these teams, they were teaching we were trying to get them to be clear that they were intentionally modeling what they expected the department chairs to do. And then as time went on, the chairs actually often got some responsibility for leading those department chair teams, some tasks that were sort of not hugely scary, but would give them the beginning of some practice at doing these things. So instead of just saying, now you're going to be leading data analysis in your department, giving them a specific task that they could do with the department so they could sort of try it out and then come back and talk about it and how did it go and what worked well and what didn't. And if it blew up in your face, why did it? What could you do next? To give them a chance to kind of work that out together. So what we found was that these leadership teams meet fairly frequently for high schools, more often than the departments met typically. And so it was pretty easy to, there was a huge transition in these teams, but it was pretty easy to do, relatively easy to do, because they had, if you focused on it, if you sort of made that the agenda, a lot of these schools would use the parking lot idea. So the old things that everybody would always worry about got put up on a piece of paper, and at the end of the meeting they'd spend 5 minutes saying how those things were going to be dealt with, so that it became clear that that's not what we used to do, is not how we're spending our time together anymore, that we're going to be working on building the leadership of this team and moving the school forward. So it was relatively easy to get the leadership team to become a community of practice, to become energized, excited, and to sort of rethink their roles. And you can see, we actually interviewed principals and department chairs in the schools that we worked with, and this is an example of one of the chairs said, I can look back over 36 years and it makes me quite sad, actually, that this model wasn't the status quo from the beginning, because it's just so much more respectful, not only of the individuals who are the so-called leaders, but of everybody in the school. It really treats people more like professionals, which historically hasn't really been the case. So these people were coming to meetings and they were just being asked to do things that they weren't really being tapped for their potential. So, and this is another quote, but one of the challenges then for these teams, and to the question of can you do this in a year, what we found in all of our schools was that if you really focused on it, that you could build the capacity of this leadership team in a year. And that these schools were very energized, but a lot of that year was spent on professional development. We had meetings where we would ask the department chairs, what are you concerned about? Like, what do you need to know to be able to do this now that you understand what your role is? And sometimes there would be a couple of months spent, or 3 months in some schools spent, where there might be a day away for them, or some opportunities for professional development, or just working through content in the meetings that they regularly scheduled to build their capacity to do this work. But they were very trepidatious about taking this out to the school, and so in most of the schools there was only some small transition in what they actually did in their departments in that first year, because they were kind of figuring out what they were supposed to do. So one of the challenges is then, how do you make that transition from building this great team who supports each other and kind of gets it, to take that to the departments? The departments have some challenges because they don't have as much time together typically. The culture of the department in the schools we worked with, maybe in your schools as well, often determine whether they met or who met. Sometimes there were regularly scheduled meetings, but they didn't necessarily have them, or everyone didn't show up. So kind of building that, building the same kind of momentum in the departments is a challenge. And so one of the big, I guess, next step challenges is, how do you go from building this dynamic leadership team to getting out into the engaged faculty and engaging faculty in that work. There's sort of a trade-off if you can have some exchange between the leadership team and the rest of the faculty. You don't want to have too much turnover in that team, because it takes a while to build the team. And so if people are moving in and out, you're sort of getting a new, different group of people who don't know the work, haven't had the training and gone through everything together. But you do need that exchange. You need to have some way of not creating this elite team that nobody else feels connected to. And so some exchange is important. It's a balance that I think a lot of the schools had to struggle with. And then there are going to be people who either oppose or just don't care about what you're doing in that leadership team. And so over time, the goal is to try to reduce the number of people who are disengaged and kind of grow that involvement over time. That's what those arrows are suggesting. So how do you do that, I guess, is the question. And what do we see in these schools that enabled this to happen and that prevented it? So some of the key enablers were, first of all, principal commitment. I mean, in some of the schools, we did work with one school where the principal was not particularly excited about this reform. And so, that makes a huge difference because it requires a change in the principal's behavior for this to happen. Having resources, some of the schools we worked with had some grant funds available to meet, have days away. The grant, the Wallace grant that we had itself provided $10,000 to each school, so that bought some time for them to have some professional development days. I think that we both agree that work was really, that time away was really important to them, their ability to kind of get out of their day-to-day pressures and to build themselves as a team and sort of rethink things. Having retreats is a good way to support that development and transition. I think we thought a lot too about what our role as university partners was, and I think we played kind of a neutral, as opposed to someone from the district coming to help the school do this, where there is sort of an oversight kind of dynamic, even if it's not intended. Our ability to just be there to support them and listen to them. A lot of what we did, we very seldom came in with an agenda. Usually we'd go in and, say, like Paul said, how can we help you? And, and they would share ideas and we'd say, that sounds like a great idea. Did you think about this? Or there's some research on that. Or, and we also played a role, I think, of holding them accountable and I don't mean that in a heavy way, but as the year gets really busy and there are bomb scares or, violence erupting or, major conflicts within the school or whatever it is, your attention gets distracted from this. And so, the fact that we were coming on Tuesday to talk about what was going to happen on the meeting on Wednesday made them think about it. And I think that was an important aspect of this process. And so I think finding a way to make that commitment real and make it a priority is really important. The district relationship was also really important, and we haven't talked much about that, but one of the things that happened we worked with 2 districts, so there were 6 schools in 2 different districts, and one of the things that happened was that as the teachers got more empowered, sometimes, and this is throughout this project in the 18 schools, but sometimes as the teachers got empowered, the district would have a new initiative that would conflict with what the teachers were trying to do. And so having some clear communication with the district about what you're trying to do and some commitment from them to help you is really important, because a lot of the schools were afraid to invest time because they thought, well, we're going to put a bunch of time in this, and then the district's going to tell us we have to do something else, And so a lot of the schools ended up having district people come to the leadership team meetings, which was a little awkward at first, but in the end, I think it was really useful to have them sitting there and understanding what the school was going through, understanding the commitment they were making, and then being able to say, that's not going to be a barrier. We aren't going to do that, or yeah, we have this thing going on, and this is what it is, and this is how it could interact with what you're doing. So that kind of communication and support was really important. And then, having the ability to manage these other disruptions was a really important thing. And finally, effective communication with the school. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to say, but, I have this slide that sort of shows the relationship to the broader school, and It's very easy to make this be a little club. It's kind of, these people are having fun together. They're learning things together. They're solving problems. Their own practice is improving, and it's easy to, if there's not a lot of support and communication to the rest of the school about what's going on, to make this just be something that's happening in the leadership team and not in the rest of the school. So continuing that communication and making sure people are aware of what's going on with the team, I think, is really critical. So what barriers do you want to highlight here? Should we go right to lessons learned? Sure, we can do that. So let's do that.
So to try to pull these two strands together, one is in the terms of the role transition itself and the transitions within the district and schools and the professional development. So what did we learn? Well, one of the interesting things about distributing instructional leadership was you built on existing school capacity. Now that's why it's so important for contextualizing this. Where are the assets? What's the capacity we already have? And so that's why we didn't go in and say, well, you have to start here, because we didn't know we had to start exactly where they had to start. What capacity do they have, and identify that. And we had no simple recipe. And the way I try to talk about it in our work is that it's context responsive leadership. People say, well, what are you going to do if this happens? I said, well, it depends. And lots of people don't like answers like that. Many people want crisp answers. They want simplistic answers. This is highly complex work. And what works in your school, it may work in your school, but as you look at it, you've got a different set of players, you've got a different history, you've got a different, parent group, or you've got different issues, and so all of that's going to change. Professional development clearly was the mainstay throughout. Every time the meetings actually were job-embedded professional development. That's what they were. There was always an agenda for learning within the creation, building, and meeting of these teams. So the meeting wasn't just to pass communication on in a one-way fashion. The meeting was for us to learn together, to construct knowledge together, and to move forward together. It's really interesting in distributing instructional leadership that you have to have really strong leaders to do that. They have to understand this work, and they have to be willing and able to empower, engage, enthuse, motivate. They have to do all of that, and it takes really strong principalship with high credibility to be able to do this. And in some cases, the principles changed over. Resources, Carolyn has already mentioned that, how important those are. One of the things that I'm sure you know is that it's very easy to lose sight of student learning when you're building these teams. You have to keep it always at the core of the conversation. Why are we looking at data? Why are we trying to learn how to run meetings? Why are we doing? Because it has to do with student learning outcomes. That's got to be the driver. And that can easily slip away, because we know sometimes schools become nice places for adults to work, but they may not be completing their mission. Legitimizing, we've already talked about that. I want to stop and talk about the distraction for a minute. There are always surprises that come our way. Another reason that you don't have simple recipes. The first one is the metro. Now, how many of you would have guessed that when we were pushing forward in one district, that the metro would have been a problem? And what was the problem? That the union and the school district had decided that they could create professional collaboration time. We talked about how important professional collaboration time was. Because so many students in this district ride the city bus service, the metro said, I'm sorry, we can't change our schedule to accommodate that. And so here we've done all of this planning. The district had done, the union had negotiated, and the bus company said, no, we got to pull up at the middle school at 2:55, and we're leaving at 3:10. Period. Now, it took a year then to settle that issue. But it was a complete, blindside. And some people said, well, shouldn't you have thought of that before? Yeah, probably should have. But it was a surprise. Turnover, it came in two ways. We did have a principal leave, we had several coordinators leave, and we had several chairs leave. One of the things that happens, by the way, with people who think they've inherited this chair and they're going to stay in it along as Queen Elizabeth staying in reign in Great Britain, is that when they begin to see the work ahead of them, they self-select out. And not in a terrible way, but I remember hearing some people say, you know what, I think the direction we're going is the right direction. I simply don't have the energy to do it. Thank you. That's the best thing you could have done. Now, don't we wish other people who are low performers would be that honest? Grant funding we've already talked about, and that is the importance of external funding. Okay, we're right toward our end.
And I just want to, Paul and I as academics tend to like the academic research perspective, but I think we've done a pretty good job in this toolkit. I recommend that you go to it. The handout that you got is some excerpts from that toolkit, but what we tried to do was to collect not just sort of like, how do you do this description, but things that the principals and the leadership teams actually used in the process. So there are tools for, creating an effective agenda for the leadership team. For the WAN ad is one of these things where things that you can do. So not just to sort of say, okay, now we're going to change the role, but some tools that you could use in a meeting to actually work on that, and a process that kind of just tries to capture the process used by the schools that we worked with. The tools were all things that they actually used in their schools, and there's probably 50 or 75 of them in this toolkit. So I recommend that if you want to do something like this, take a look at it. It might help you, even if it's just a matter of pulling out a couple things that might be useful to you in a meeting. So.